we had a hard time getting, capitalizing on Powley. We won, and then nothing changed. It was quite horrid, actually, and it took us a while to capitalize on that.
And this is one of the strategies government have used with Aboriginal peoples and the Métis specifically. Let's bust them apart by divide and conquer, and we'll deal with them as individuals. We don't see them as communities, and that is very hard to do when you are united in a solid one objective. And Powley was able to forge that, bringing communities from down south of Lake Huron to all the way up to Timmins into Mattawa, is that we all knew that we were in the battle together.
But when we hit the Ontario Court of Appeal, again, we had wind in our sails. The judgments were coming out not only in our favor, but very strong wording out of the courts. Particularly at the Ontario Court of Appeal, really chastised the Ontario government for not dealing with Métis, and basically told them, you need to get some negotiations underway. And so that finally led us to the point where the Ontario government was kind of forced into setting up a negotiations table. And so there was, after that, we put together the rest of the negotiations team. We had a remarkable team.
2004, we had the AGA here in Thunder Bay at Chippewa Park. And the Minister of Natural Resources at the time, I believe he wasn't in Toronto, he was somewhere else and all that, but they wound up having Tony and Gary, and then they wound up having a phone call with him in one of the other buildings out at the Chippewa there.
We had a small room there that was piled full of boxes and the park's materials and so on. We could hardly move in there. And outside there was a big room, there was a big assembly hall filled with our people. It was the morning to be discussing what were we going to do for the fall hunt. We didn't have an agreement, and people were really upset.
Here's the lines we're at. Either we're going to have an agreement or we're not going to have an agreement. We put a lot of work into this, both sides, and it comes down to the crunch. And I've got an assembly room, right across the hall, waiting for an answer on this.
I got hold of David Ramsey, who was on a sailboat in Lake Huron. They were still giving us a bit of a hard time, but then finally we got from the minister's chief of staff something that the minister had signed off on and approved. The terms of 4-point agreement.
And when they come out, they announced that we have an agreement for our harvesting rights with the Ontario government, and the crowd just went nuts. It was a great moment for everybody there.
Ladies and gentlemen, members of the media and our citizens, this morning, just a very short while ago, in a conversation that we have had, and I had with the Minister of Natural Resources from the Government of Ontario, we now have confirmation that after 132 years of discrimination, racial prejudice, a denial of the very existence of the Métis people in the province of Ontario, ever since the days of the bounty of $5,000 passed on the legislature in Ontario on the head of Louis Riel, we now have a government of Ontario that has made the commitment that it is going to respect and recognize the rights of the Métis Nation in this province.
But it was so electrified, that room, in the sense that people were, you know, if we wouldn't have got an agreement, it was wonderful to have the solidarity of our people behind us. That whole room was in solidarity that, you know, we will do something, because we've been patient through the courts, we've been patient for a 10-year battle, you know, we've done things properly, responsibly through a negotiated process, and we deserve a negotiated, deserve to have our rights recognized, and we deserve a negotiated agreement.
And so I think that 2004 agreement, people don't understand how much it made a difference in people's lives. They didn't have to go out, you know, as the court says in Pauli, skulking through the bush like common criminals. They were able to go out and hunt with their children and have a level of pride and respect for themselves as well as for who they were as people, and not have to worry about the Ministry of Natural Resources nabbing them on the way home.